and welcome to Behind the Beacon, another conversation between myself, Daralyse Lyons, Chief Revenue Officer at the Bucks County Beacon, and Emily Smith, owner and publisher. Yeah, we're grateful to be back here with you again. I thought the first episode was a rousing success, and I'm excited to talk today, Emily, with you about creative problem solving.
Yes. Yeah. So
Yeah, well, we just before hitting the record button on this episode, Emily, you were saying that you describe your job as being a creative problem solver. So can you say more about that?
yeah. So I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in graphic design. So I went to a 4-year college, got the full design background. I minored in art history and I had a concentration in web design and development.
Mhm.
So obviously that's all led me to here. But part of the process of learning art is learning problem solving creatively. So it has filtered into everything else I have ever done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny, before we sort of go down that road, you said, obviously it's all led me here. And my brain said, how is that at all obvious? Like, who takes a master's in a fine arts degree and like somehow ends up a publisher and owner of a newspaper? But I think to the point that you're making, like thinking about things in a visual way, thinking about things through a historical lens, like does lend itself to the news industry. But I don't know. My brain didn't make that obvious.
Well, I mean, the obvious part is I built this website, which may not be obvious to anyone, but I built the Bucks County Beacon website. But also in my background, I worked with a lot of startups, and that came because I had the design degree to learn how to do branding
Yeah.
and marketing and advertising. I learned all of that stuff. And because I had that, then small businesses would come to me for a logo or a website,
Yes.
and then they would want the next thing. And then they didn't know how to make the next thing. So then I started being the person that knows what the process is to start the business, to do the business, to grow the business. And that's what led me here.
Right, right. Well, I'm so glad that you spelled that out, because one of the things that I feel really lucky to have at the Beacon is you in the role of sort of like, I don't know, art design department. I don't know. We're such a small, scrappy staff that I think everybody does a little bit of everything. But, businesses will come to me or I'll go to them and we'll talk about who they're looking to reach, what sort of ads maybe they're looking to create. And then I come to you with an idea or some images that they've sent to me and some copy. And you're able to take an idea and improve upon it and make it better and meet their objectives. And I think that that is rare in the news industry. No, I mean, it is. I'm trying to think about my previous experiences, and I've worked with some amazing graphics people or arts people, but they didn't always have a business lens or that problem solving lens. So they could create something that was super visually appealing, but not necessarily,
Useful.
yeah, or marketable, or
Yeah.
I don't know, or something was missing, or it was too wordy, but it was pretty or something. And so I really love that you're able to offer that to businesses as part of the deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it too. As I was telling you before we started recording, I very much am enjoying designing ads for companies.
Yeah, right.
It's fun for me because I used to in my old life, I used to have my own graphic design business, and I had a bunch of different clients, and like my favorite part about my job was that it wasn't always the same, you
Yes.
know. And having that kind of job is what leads you to thinking the way that I think. Some designers work for corporate America or, a specific company, and they have the brand standards of that one company,
Mhm.
and they have the creative direction of the person in charge there. But the benefit that I had was I had that for a bunch of different companies
Yeah.
all at the same time. And it just, the more you're exposed to, the more opportunity you have to figure out how to make it better,
Yeah.
and you just have more experience at what works. And, it's funny because I used to build these websites and logos and everything for like small businesses. Like my next door neighbor is a carpenter, you know, and the problems that he would have, like he doesn't like email. Now I built his website
Yes.
14 years ago or something. And he did not have a smartphone and he did not like email, but he would get text messages. So I had to build a system so that people could contact him the way that they wanted to contact him on the internet. And then it would text him, you know,
Um,
and it's things like that where you're like, there is a problem. Here are the parameters. How do I fit this into those parameters? You know?
I love that. And you had said a little earlier as you were speaking, you said the way that I think. And one of the things that I find really interesting is when someone thinks in a certain way, when someone is resourceful or thinks creatively or non-linearly or strategically, it can often be challenging to connect those dots for other people or to break that down or even just to deal with when people don't think in those creative ways. So like how do you as a leader who has this sort of creative brain that makes these connections, how do you deal with sort of like leading a team to meet these creative problems or to,
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, navigate things when they
Yeah.
come up, which they do because we're still a startup. And so issues are going to arise.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm learning as we go,
Yeah.
obviously. People management is its own thing. And if I could draw on other art experience that has led me here, I used to manage a pottery studio, like a paint it yourself pottery studio,
Yeah.
where I had like 10 teenage girls that worked for me.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Right.
You can imagine how that goes.
Mm.
And I cut my teeth on how to deal with kids that didn't even want to work. You know what I mean? So I think that the way that I think and solve problems is only made better by other people participating. So the more I can have the interaction with them, the more I can figure out what it is that they want and need, if that
Yes.
makes sense.
Yeah, right. And I think that in many ways is the whole job because it's like clients, customers, readers, employees, et cetera. We're all just dealing with a pile of problems, but in
Yeah.
a really exciting way. I mean, I know when I came on to working for the Beacon, I feel like the job was kind of like, okay, diversify our revenue and figure out how to make this work. And we didn't know, and we still don't know. I'm
Yeah.
still, to a certain extent, throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, while also trying to figure out, how do we best serve our community of readers, and how do we not let the tail wag the dog? How do we not,
Yeah.
let funding drive decision making, and rather make the decisions that are in the best interest of the organization, and then find the funding to cover
Right.
that or to, support and sustain that. So, and I think similarly, like Cyril's job is a bunch of creative problem solving, and our accountant is doing I mean, you can't get too creative with the numbers, but she's trying to figure out like what systems make the most sense, and our, social
Yes.
media person, et cetera. So yeah, it does feel like we're all just trying to.
Well, and I try to hire people that I know can do that. Do you know what I mean? That's
Right.
part of it because I can't do all of the figuring out how to solve the problem, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because delegation is an important part of management.
That's true. And then figuring out what is the problem that we're trying to solve. So I know that, in my role, I came in thinking, okay, great. So the goal here is to diversify our funding sources, right? That was the goal. That remains the goal. But then I started to look at, well, there are so many different ways to do that, and what seems to be working, and how do we, kind of create a strategic plan that is flexible and expansive enough to not just solve problems necessarily, but to actually move in the direction that we're looking to go. So, for example, I think at one point we were really wanting to hire a part-time ad salesperson, and that's still on the bucket list. That's still going to happen. But realizing, I think you and I
Okay.
both realized, like, oh, well, actually, it's more important for us to build up our book of vendors, of clients, of customers before we onboard that person and introduce them you know, to our customers. So, like, I think sometimes I have personally thought, like, okay, this is what I need to do. And then realize as I was traveling that road, oh, actually, maybe that does need to happen, but it's step, Y, and I'm still at C. So maybe I need to do, however many
Yeah.
things before getting to Y.
Well, and that's all startup culture, right? That's iteration.
Yes.
So one of the things that they say is, I mean, I think Steve Jobs said it, fail fast and learn, and that's the idea. Like you're not going to get it right immediately, but the fact is that by going that direction, you're going to learn something and it might get you closer to the thing that you need to know and need to solve.
Yeah.
Because you can't solve the problem that you don't know exists.
Right. What
So,
what do you think your, like, most your happiest, most enjoyable, most fortuitous failure to date at the Beacon has been? Do you
oh god. There are so many failures.
Well, I did qualify it by the sort of the most positive failure to
Uh,
date.
Beacon Fest. Beacon Fest was the most positive failure. For those of you that were there, I know you. 'Cause there was, like, 20 of you there. Yes. Thank you for coming. Yeah, Beacon Fest was we tried to do a music festival to try to bring together the community and kind of have, like, a fun time and have our readers there, and I sold sponsorships. We
Yeah.
had we had, like, activist organizations there and whatever, and it was a cool event, and, like, the bands were awesome. I had the best time, but I was standing in the barn by myself.
Okay.
Oh god. Yeah. Yeah. And, I got the best of everything and it was too big. I thought too optimistically about it and didn't quite make the money we were supposed to make. But we didn't lose a lot of money.
Okay, yeah.
We didn't lose a lot of money, but and it was lovely. It was the
Yeah.
best failure, you know?
I love that. Well, and speaking of events, and this one I hope will not be a failure. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to try to hit this one hard. On Tuesday, June 2nd, from 6:30 to 8 p.m., the Beacon is co-hosting an event in partnership with the Doylestown Action League at Borough Hall in Doylestown, for anyone who's familiar. And it's about the power of participation, showing up for ourselves and our communities. And we have four panelists, and it's moderated by Connor O'Hanlon, for anyone who has any, familiarity with politics in Bucks County, particularly in Doylestown. Connor O'Hanlon is a young politician in Doylestown. And yeah, I mean, we've got some great panelists. We have Lauren Christella, president and CEO of Committee of 70, Amy Weidstrom, who's a political scientist and the executive director of the PA League of Women Voters, Ariel Verk, a psychotherapist, a part owner of Welsh Psychotherapy, who's doing work at the intersection of trauma-informed care, immigrants' rights, and inclusive policy, and then Nick May, who's the executive director of NAMI Bucks County, which is a mental health advocate and public speaker. And so, I think that event hopefully will not be a failure. But if nothing else, we'll have the four panelists, you, myself, and
Yeah.
Connor will be there. So, like, good.
Yeah.
There'll be somewhat of a turnout. But yeah, I mean, I think that I kind of feel like you have to create a space for people to come together, and sometimes the first try,
Yeah.
doesn't materialize, and that's okay. I mean, the whatever the 10,000 hours thing is, right? That,
Yeah.
like, you just kinda put in the time and learn from different things and, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and lesson learned on Beacon Fest that I put towards this event was I told you, no, I am not paying for the space.
Yeah, that's right.
You
Yeah.
said, what is the budget? And I said, $0. Good luck.
Yeah, and you know what? Free space. We got a free space. We've also managed somehow to I think this is where partnership and collaboration is super helpful because we have 4 panelists and a moderator, all of whom are going to be spreading the word. The Doylestown Action League is going to be spreading the word. We are going to be telling our community. We're telling you now, if you're listening to this,
Yeah.
if you're on social media. There'll be a newsletter that goes out when this podcast episode is released. And so, I mean, I think about when you're building something, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And so I
Yeah.
think that for me is always something that I try to do is like, how can we leverage what we've done and what other people have done and then just build on it sort of progressively.
Yes. Yes. When I used to sell real estate, it's like every
You
job of mine.
have 9 lives. I'm not surprised anymore. You say something and I'm like, if I didn't know you, I would think you were lying, but I do know you, and so I know that you have done everything that you talk about.
When I used to sell real estate, my boss, my broker, told me when I first started, she said, "Tell me about your network."
Yeah.
And I said, "My mom has 10 brothers and sisters." And she
Yes.
said, "You'll be fine." Because it's like a spider web,
Yeah.
right? So the longer you're in the business, in any business, if it's the same business, it spider webs out because you meet people that then introduces you to other people, that then introduces you to other people, and that's how real estate agents have, like, referral business.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
referral business is the thing where you don't have to work to get it, and it's the same thing with collaboration, you know? The more people you meet, the more people you meet, and the more you're able to work together and expand your reach. It's the key to the whole thing.
Well, it's interesting because my mom is one of 10. And I was an only child until I was 12, and then my sister came along. Love my sister so much, but I think I have sort of both the ability to work and operate independently, having been an only child until I was 12 and like figuring stuff out. But I also was one of 23 cousins. I
Yeah.
just
That
on my
must be
mom's
why we like
side.
each other so
Yeah,
much.
I think it is. I think it's why we like each other, and I think it's probably why I perceive you to be, and I would consider myself to be the same, like fearless. I mean, I will approach
Yeah.
anyone at any time for any reason, especially if I believe in the mission or the product or the vision, and I just want to learn about them. And my network is vast, and I don't feel like I have to put that much work into building it. I feel like it's just
Right.
interwoven into how I've always lived.
The fabric of the way you grew up makes a big
Yeah.
difference.
Right, and I've never connected those dots. I always just thought that was my mom's experience, but look at therapy. Like, here
Yeah.
we are, like, delving into our childhoods.
Tell me
Uh,
about your mother. No, I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
yeah, that's true.
My mother is a social worker, so that
Mm.
says a lot more. I was therapized at home from birth.
Yeah,
My mom
yeah,
was always talking about, conflict resolution and eye language and all of that stuff. But I think the funny thing about the big family thing, my husband is an only child
yeah.
and has no cousins that he knows. His mom, like, separated herself from her family when she was like 20 years old and moved to New York City. And so he was always just him and his mom. And I, on the other hand, grew up with a vast network of family that had a family business. And like when my mom didn't have a babysitter, she dropped us off at the family business.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, totally. Yeah,
So what happened from that experience, which is so different than my husband's experience, is that I am very comfortable in large groups,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know, and I can figure out commonalities between me and other people because you have to when
Yeah.
you're in a big family, and there has to be some kind of, like, through line, so you have to
Yeah.
figure out what it is, and my husband hates big groups. He likes one-on-one, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's fascinating though because I mean, I think it can go either way. I mean, there's a lot of people in my very big family who are super shy and they
Yeah,
never had to take up space because they just were like there and everybody
yeah,
else talked loudly and made a bunch of
yes.
noise.
That's they sit in a different room at the holidays. They all
They
sit together quietly.
yeah, reading
Yeah,
their book and now
yeah,
scrolling on their phone.
yes.
But yes, yes.
Oh god,
Totally.
that's funny.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating. And my mom, she was a single mom until I was 11, raised me on her own and was an accountant. And so I grew up talking interest amortization at the dinner table. And I still geek out, Emily, as you know, about like the creative problem solving of my side of things. Like, oh, well, how do we do this for this amount of money? And if we just brought in such and such, and if we like, and this grant budget or whatever, like I get so excited, not just about the people, but about the numbers and about what those numbers mean. Like if we bring in this
Yes,
amount of revenue for the beacon, that means that we can reach this many more people or that we can do this
yes,
exciting new project or whatever it is.
yes. I also find numbers fascinating, and I am always looking for a creative way to use money to make money, so I think we definitely have that in common. I I'm still obsessed with the idea of us figuring out how to get enough money to use interest to pay for things,
Right, right,
because
right.
that's how the big boys do it, right? Your New York Times, your Washington Post, your whatever,
Yeah.
is that they have a huge fund, right?
Well, that's where endowment money comes in. So if anyone
Yeah.
is listening to this who's thinking about estate planning in the future, my email inbox is always open. It's Daralyse@buckscountybeacon.com. But yeah, and I'd love to hear from our readers and our listeners, like what kinds of problems we have solved for them and or what kinds of problems they would like us to solve. Because that's one of the reasons that I think the media can be so impactful and so effective is like holding power to account in ways that I think make a tremendous difference in people's lives. And it's not always easy to connect those dots, but I'm thinking about, for example, like Sheriff Fred Huron and the work that the Beacon did in telling that story and how I feel like that was brought a problem to light, which then the community was able to solve.
Right. Yeah, and before I ever started at the Beacon, I never knew that solutions journalism was a thing, and I find it to be the most fascinating way that the media can interact with the community. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, the ability to have someone reach out to us and say, "I've got this problem in my town. I'm not allowed to, say, I don't know, park my RV in my driveway."
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then, we would have the opportunity to go and do the research and, find out and educate the community on why,
Right.
you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
and how to change it. Like, at which I love that. That is what I strive for, is the ability for us to not just tell stories, but to educate and empower people.
Absolutely. And I think that that would be a huge reason why hopefully people will come to our event on the 2nd is to learn how to be empowered. It's also, in my work, which is you think, chief revenue officer, okay, my job is about generating money. I feel like, I mean, that is a huge part of the job, but the bigger part of how I envision this job is talking to community members about like, I know just about various issues. And some of the most exciting part of this work for me has been talking to different people in the community and then bringing ideas back to Cyril, our editor, and saying, like, so and so told me that that this is an issue that's going on in their schools. Like,
Yeah.
do you want to look into that? Or, this is something that was brought to my attention. And sometimes people think that there's a problem that doesn't actually exist. So we recently had a sponsored post that went onto the website written by the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania. And it was about how the misinformation around voting and voting issues, like, people are so confused about how do they vote and what has changed and what do they do. And there's actually the problems that are being identified aren't actually problems because people don't understand the process by which a bill has to become a law and then that law goes into effect. And so people are, I hope that by identifying problems and by identifying when there aren't problems, we can
Yeah.
maybe, yeah, to use your word, empower people to take action in their lives.
Right. Or to know why not to. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
there is so much education needed in amongst, like, your regular everyday Americans for how government works.
Yeah. Including me. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
confused and I
Yeah.
work in the news industry. I'm like, who does what and what? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's something that is so valuable, and the question that always comes to me, which is a problem I am trying to solve, is how do you get people to learn the things that you think they need to know? Because
Mm,
they might not read it,
yeah.
because
Right.
it seems like it might be boring, but, the question is that some of the stuff that you need to know about how government works really affects your day to day, you know?
Right. And I think it's drawing those connections. We earlier on in this conversation, we talked about sort of like all the different pinpoints and how to link them, but people don't. And myself included, it's like, okay, I live in Philadelphia and I remember one of the things that is very invisible is trash, right? Like, it gets picked up on a certain day of the week. If there's a holiday, it gets picked up on another day. And I really didn't think very much about trash until I think it was sometime last year. Philly went on, there was a trash strike in Philadelphia. And it was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, who do you call? What do you do? What is happening? People were losing their minds
Yeah.
around trash. And that's just one example of something that most people did not know, like, who is responsible for this? How is it dealt with?
Well,
What happens if something goes wrong, et cetera, et
yeah.
cetera.
Yeah. As a former member of borough council in
Yes.
my municipality, trash is very interesting to me. What I learned in the course of being a borough council member is that there are these trash contracts,
Yeah.
and they get bid every 3 or 4 years, and the amount of things that municipal government is asking for on these contracts is like, how many bags of trash versus how is it, the automatic trash cans? And, like, what about bulk items? Like, all of that is in the bids.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing that I learned is most places only get one bid for their trash contract, and then the prices go up, which is what happened where we are, because the companies, and this is something that we should do a story on because I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
The companies kind of inside baseball it,
Yeah.
and they pick their areas, and they don't compete with each other. So while we're trying to get competitive bids, there aren't competitive bids to be had. So then they can, inflate their prices.
Wow. I mean, on the one hand, that seems pretty corrupt. And on the other hand, it sounds ingenious. I mean, can you imagine if other businesses just were like, okay, I'm going to put it, because what is that thing? Like, if you want to create a profitable business or something and you open a pizza shop on a beach, like, what's the best location to open it is next to the next pizza shop or something on the beach, like that's the everyone thinks it's to go far away, but it's actually no, you create more business by concentrating that
Yeah,
business in a certain area. But I don't think that that works in every case. And
it doesn't.
that's
It doesn't.
brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, so I find trash fascinating, and I'm glad that it came up in our conversation
Me
because
too. Yeah, let's talk about trash. Yeah, maybe
yeah.
maybe the next episode will just be like, bring us your instead of bring us your tired, you're poor, you're hungry. It's like bring us your garbage and we will
Yeah.
creatively solve that problem. I think
Right.
that
Yeah, no, it's funny when I was at a conference last year, I think it was Lion Publishers
yeah.
conference that I was at. There was a lady in she was from Rhode Island, I think, and their publication started doing tours of municipal facilities, and
Wow.
I thought that was fascinating. You know, it's like you set up something so that the public gets to find out how you make the bacon. You know what I mean? Like what the deal is.
I love that. And I would be really interested if someone is watching this, listening to this, and there's topics that you want us to delve into and that you want to know more about, either because there's something that isn't happening in your area or in your life, or something that is happening that, is a problem that needs to be solved. Please reach out to us. Let us know because some of the most interesting articles that we've written have been because community members come to us and say, "Hey, I don't like this," or "Hey, how did this thing happen?" or "Why is this happening?" or "Why was it happening and now it's not?" or "Why was it not happening, now it's happening now?" So yeah, I think that that is something that I would love for people who are listening to this to do. And then I'm always going to make this pitch anytime that we address an audience, but like the more that you support the Beacon, whether that be sharing our content or whether that be making a donation, preferably a recurring donation, or introducing us to funders or whatever it is, the more problems that we are then able to creatively solve, because to me there's a direct line between the money and the scope of our ability to influence and to make impact.
It's true. It's true. And the more money we get, the more stories we can cover.
Right. And the more comprehensively we can cover those
Yes.
stories so we can then follow something. And I think a lot of people aren't aware. I wasn't aware prior to going into this industry, but there's something called like FOIAs, like so Freedom of Information Acts, where we have to pay sometimes to get information to do a story. And this is beyond paying for the reporter's time and their travel and, all of that. It's like, we have to send people to go do the research, and we sometimes have to pay for documents and records. And then if we promote, like if we market ourselves, there are costs to that, to being able to spread the word. So yeah, it really is. There's a there's a lot that goes into it,
Yeah.
financially as well as logistically.
Yes. Yes. And it all goes hand in hand because you have to figure out how to do it logistically, sometimes without the financially portion. And you need the financially part to get the logistic part done, you know?
Right, which is a chicken egg sort of
Yeah.
thing. And one of the things that I have found is that if sometimes funders need to see proof of concept, like, "Oh, great, you've done this amazing work, we want to support you." But sometimes if you've done this amazing work on a shoestring budget, they're like, "Oh, cool, that's what you're
You're
capable
like,
of,
"Why do you
and
need any
therefore
money?"
you're doing it. Why do you need our money?" Yeah. So
Oh, you froze now,
so the
Daryl.
takeaways are we solve problems creatively and we need money in order to do that. That's what I'm taking away from this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
They work
And
hand in hand.
yeah, hand in hand, right. And also like get involved. There are ways to get involved and engage with us and with what's happening in our communities, including coming to the event on June 2nd. It's a free event. I should have said that at the beginning, but it's a free event. We just ask for people to RSVP in advance so we know how many people are going to be in the space, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes to the Eventbrite.
Did
But
you
yeah, Emily, what's the Is there a problem that you are working to solve right now at the Beacon?
Yep,
Or just one,
always.
just give us one. I mean, we could be here all day, but like, what is one problem that you're working to solve right now?
The biggest problem I am working to solve right now, which is really more thinking about it than actually doing anything because I have to process it first
Yeah.
before I actually put it into practice, is the communication strategy of our distributed team and having a policy attached to it. So, how what is the easiest way to get people on the same page when they're not in the same location? And
Right.
I think that's the biggest thing that I'm formulating in my mind and really trying to attack and put
Yeah.
into place.
I can see that. And I think my biggest problem that I'm looking to solve is also location based, is how to really bring people out into the community to engage with us, whether at this June 2nd event or hopefully we turn 5 in September. And so I really want to kind of create buzz around that and generate revenue and community interest for a September event, because I just, as much as I love a remote world and as much as I love that we are digital only, I think that the more we can get people into a space, the
Yeah.
more impact we can create. So, yeah, so that's my own problem that I'm looking to solve.
Have you seen the documentary called Join or Die?
No, but now I will. Is that
Yeah, go
or
watch it.
okay, all right,
It's
that's my homework for yeah.
that is your homework.
That's my home. You heard it. My boss has assigned me to watch the
It is
documentary
an
Join or Die.
assignment for you. Yeah, Join or Die is a documentary about building community and how it's actually better for you to be part of a community. So they talk about bowling a lot and like the fall of bowling leagues and how that's affected community. And, I think it's just fascinating. So everyone should go watch it if you haven't seen it. And I talked to people in my community. I talked to a friend of mine about that documentary,
Yeah.
and she watched it, and then she thought about it, and now she's created at our borough building community game nights every 2 weeks on Fridays
Oh, I love
to
that.
bring the community together, and meet each other. And yeah, it's really something that has been lost with the rise of technology and cell phones and,
Yes.
these video chats that we can have. I mean, thank God we can have this connection, but simultaneously, there's something lost,
Yeah.
and we need to get that back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So help us do that. Support us. Go to buckscountybeacon.com. You can click on the support button. You can click on the About Us page and find Emily's contact information, my contact information. Reach out to either of us directly, because we work for you, and I just love this community that I get to be a part of and get to help continue to grow and build.
Yes. I am so glad you're a part of our community, building this community.
Yeah. So, as Emily said last time, we're building the plane as we're flying it. Reach out to us with your questions, comments, concerns. And until next time, thanks so much for joining us for this second episode of Behind the Beacon.
Until next